All right. Jack Smith today, special counsel Jack Smith, has asked the Supreme Court to take the case and to rule quickly on whether this Nazi fuck Donald Trump can be prosecuted on the very obvious charges that he plotted to overturn the 2020 election results. I've said before, our system of democracy and justice and the courts and so on and so forth and the free press is used by those who would tear it down and burn it, rip it up by the roots. The Christian fascists, the political fascists, they use this system until they get the power that they're seeking. Once they get the power, then independent media, independent court system or judiciary, the separation of church and state, all of that will come to a very quick crashing through the windshield emergency stop. And the only thing left will be that which the great leader, in this case the orange bastard, says is allowable. So Jack Smith, working within that system because he has to, has asked the Supreme Court, please rule on this. We have got to proceed. Now, a federal judge ruled the case could go forward, but the orange bastard has, his phony attorneys have signaled that he would ask the federal appeals court in Washington to reverse that decision. And what Jack Smith is trying to do here is to bypass that whole appellate system. He wants to go immediately to the Supreme Court. And he filed his request today, asking the court to take up the matter directly. And this is an obvious reflection of Smith's desire to keep this trial on track and to prevent any delays that could push the case until after next year's election. And currently, it's scheduled to begin. This trial that Trump tried to overturn the results of the election is scheduled for March 4th. Now, you know, my feeling, of course, is so entirely different from that of Jack Smith's, and I realize this might be my ignorance coming out, but I don't think there's any question about Trump's commitment to overthrowing the government. I mean, what the hell? But we live in a system of laws, not men, at least until Trump gets the presidency again. Then it will be a system of man, one man. So given that we live in a system of laws, I guess I have to just suck it back and just say, okay, then let's proceed. Prosecutors for Jack Smith wrote this in their Supreme Court filing this morning in part. They said, quote, "This case presents a fundamental question at the heart of our democracy, which is whether the former president is absolutely immune from federal prosecution for crimes committed while in office, or is constitutionally protected from federal prosecution when he has been impeached but not convicted before the criminal proceedings can begin." End quote. Whether he is immune from all prosecution, the divine right of kings, isn't that what that is? Didn't the Magna Carta say something about that shit had to stop? You know, 1,000 years ago, roughly. Okay, 800 years ago. Now, the earliest that the Supreme Court would hear this case, if they chose to fast track it or whatever they call it, would be January 5th. Because from what I've read, that is the next date for the justices for a scheduled private conference where they get together and decide whether or not they're even going to hear a case. Right? Now, underscoring the urgency for the prosecutors in this, in getting a quick resolution, because, you know, that can enable the case to go forward. The prosecutors know, as I do, as you do, as so many of us know, those of us who have not been deluded by the absurdities, so we stand quietly while the atrocities are committed. We're not there. You're not there. I'm not there. So, underscoring the urgency is what the prosecutors wrote when they said this, quote, "It is of imperative public importance that respondents' claims of immunity, Trump's claims of immunity, be resolved by this court, and that respondent's trial proceed as promptly as possible if his claim of immunity is rejected," end quote. Now, one of the organizing principles of Trump's life of crime has been delay, sue, delay some more, until the person either suing you or responding to your lawsuit gives up and says, oh, fuck it, it's not worth it. This case has been going on for 3-4 years. This is what Trump does, and this is what he's hoping for this time. The judge here in Florida, not the judicial system here in Atlanta by any means, but in Florida, his toy judge, federal judge that he has on the bench down here, who doesn't seem all that interested in keeping things on schedule. That would be his the charges against him, the felony charges against him for taking and maintaining and lying where it concerned the documents he stole when he left the White House. So what prosecutor Jack Smith is trying to do is to get the Supreme Court to clarify things and say, yes, Donald Trump must stand trial. No, he is not immune from prosecution. Yes, this case can proceed. No, there will be no more delays. Now, just as an aside, do you think that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to rule that way? Granted, they ruled that Nixon had to turn over the tapes while he was screaming and farting and wheezing about executive privilege because he was the president. And when the Supreme Court, I believe it was unanimously ruled against Nixon, turn over the goddamn tapes and let's find out what a criminal you are. That's my way of putting it. Nixon 2 days later resigned. Was it 2 days later, same day, 3 days, whatever it was? He resigned rather than go through that after having cut a deal with Gerald Ford for a full pardon, which meant that the truth about Nixon and his crimes would never come out, A, B, and therefore subsequent president, if we, the American people, were stupid enough to ever elect somebody this criminal, subsequent president could do it all again and get away with it. So, now at issue here, the reason Jack Smith has taken this to the Supreme Court is on December 1st, the district judge, Tanya Chutkan, rejected an argument by Trump's phony-ass lawyers that he's immune from prosecution, federal prosecution. And Judge Chutkan, in her order, wrote that being in the office of the presidency, being the president, quote, does not confer a lifelong get-out-of-jail-free pass, end quote. What I'm afraid of is that will not hold when it gets before the Supreme Court, because we have to remember, I think 6 of the 9 justices are subscribers to the Christian absurdity. And if they are subscribers to that absurd religion, which they are, some of them to far greater degrees than others, the Catholics I'm referring to, because they live in mortal fucking terror of what's going to happen to them, the Catholics do, if they don't follow every single thing that the priest pumped into their head and other body orifices when they were children. Who was it? Say, give me a child till he's 5 and I'll give you a Catholic for life. Some early on Christian fascists. I don't know who. I just remember reading that. So Chutkan also wrote, quote, Former presidents enjoy no special conditions on their federal criminal liability. Defendant Trump may be subject to federal investigation, indictment, prosecution, conviction, and punishment for any criminal acts undertaken while in office. End quote. Now, of course, the orange son of a bitch has denied any kind of culpability, any kind of wrongdoing. And he has followed the Hitler playbook absolutely. If you're going to lie, tell the big lie and say it over and over. Trump has been saying this shit since before the 2016 election, when Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but Trump won the Electoral College votes. And all during that campaign, and then also in the 2020 campaign, Trump's constant squealing about, if I am not elected or reelected, it'll only be because the election was stolen. Stolen election, stolen election, stolen election, over and over. And all during this past summer, as reporters for various networks went around to the Midwestern and Southern county fairs or state fairs and pushed their microphone in the face of white people and asked these people, who are you going to vote for in the primary? Who are you going to vote for in the 2024 election? And almost to the last white idiot, the answer came back, well, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because his election in 2020 was stolen from him. Tell the big lie over and over. Keep hammering it. Keep repeating it. Hitler wrote, and it becomes fact. I'm not quoting him. I'm just saying that was the whole idea behind the big lie. Just keep saying it and saying it and saying it. And ardent supporters, the ones that you can make believe absurdities, will eventually help you commit atrocities. And the ones who are on the fence, so to speak, if they hear it enough times, if they see this orange bastard's face enough times, and this is where I really do fault television, over and fucking over, you cannot get through a 24-hour news cycle without how many stories about this orange bastard. And yes, granted, they're all about his criminal activity or his denials of his criminal activity or his rallies where he dresses up in his blue suit and red tie, or he puts on his tux and addresses crowds who adore him, who would actually, and it's coming to this, commit those atrocities for him. So, there is so much to consider for those of us who are thinking, who still have the ability to think clearly, or nearly clearly, about the political system in this country. There's so much we have to consider. And right at the top of that list of things to consider is how quickly this democratic republic will be burned to the ground by the orange bastard and the people that he literally is considering putting into cabinet positions. I mean, just murderous fuckers. A Jewish fascist, Stephen Miller. A Hindu fascist, Kash Patel. I mean, it just goes on and on. Christian fascists coming out of the woodwork. And they are so easily motivated and controlled because they have spent their entire lives believing absurdities. And they have been primed to commit atrocities against their own country, against their fellow citizens. That's where we are. And it's very disheartening, isn't it? But it's something that is going to require a tremendous effort on the part of all of us. If Trump loses the election, and I hesitate to use the word if. I can't believe I'm saying if he loses, but if Trump loses the election, you know before the last vote is counted that this son of a bitch will be demanding that his supporters arm up and start killing people. You know this. Only he will put it in the same kind of words that a mob boss would put it in, so that it can't be tracked back to, I didn't tell people to go out and kill other people. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But those you can make believe absurdities, that in 60 cases the courts got it wrong, that the real winner was Donald Trump of the 2020 election. Those you can make believe those kinds of absurdities are the ones that you can make commit atrocities in your name. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.